Today we're talking about Easter according to Mark, leaving a legacy. Today it seems like a lot of people are getting caught up in this idea of this desire to leave their legacy to the world. Well, what exactly is a legacy that we'll be talking about? Well, a legacy is an amount of money or property left to someone in a will. Example being my grandmother died and unexpectedly left a small legacy. Or it's also the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc. that took place in the past or in a person's life. He left us a rich legacy of buildings that are genuine works of art, or her legacy will live on for generations to come. Her legacy will live on for generations to come. But will her legacy truly, really live on for generations and generations and generations to come? I remember a few years back when my father was still alive, we made a father-son trip. Just one of the last big trips Dad and I made together before he passed. And I went with him, and we traveled to the area around Somerset, Kentucky, where he wanted to take me to see the burial sites of our ancestors, because Dad grew up there. And so we went and found the gravesite of my grandmother and grandfather, my great-grandmother and great-grandfather, my aunts, some of my aunts and uncles, some of my great-aunts and great-uncles. And wherever we found a grave site that had been overgrown with weeds or grass, we had tools, and we would clear them off so people could know that someone was buried there and that this was kind of a sacred spot. And it was hard, but Dad was over 80 plus years old, but he did and we did, and he's gone now. And if I went back to Somerset, Kentucky, even though I took notes and pictures and things, I don't know if I would be able to find any of the grave sites that we visited on that trip down there. It seems to me a lot of people, especially famous people, powerful people, are really into putting their names on buildings, events, places, to leave their legacy to this world, to try and leave their legacy to this world. Now notice I said try. Back in school, high school, we read this poem titled Ozymandias. And it's written by Shelley Percy out of the 1800s. And the story is about a traveler who was going through the desert, and he saw a head that was in the sand and two legs standing there out there in the middle of nowhere. And he paused, and the poem says that beside this broken, beaten statue was a sign that read, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." But now as the traveler looks on this, there's really nothing much there. You know, there may have been a time when Ozymandias, his power was supreme, but now that time has come and is gone. And all that is left of him, and whatever this individual did was the head in the sand and legs out in the middle of a desolate desert that people have long forgot about. But like Ozymandias, I think there's something inside of each one of us that wants to leave a legacy. We want to know that our life has mattered. We want to know that in some ways we have made a difference, and that this difference will be carried on beyond us into the future. And it's important, I think, for us humans to have this desire for a legacy, because it provides a sense of meaning and purpose, proving that our lives are truly lives that do matter, even for the few short years we're here on earth. And when we feel that who we are and what we do can make a difference beyond ourselves, it increases our passion for life and helps us navigate the greatest challenges. And if this is the case, that we all have this innate desire to leave some kind of legacy, some kind of memory, some kind of purpose that we leave behind us, then I think our question we have to deal with is, since we all want to leave a legacy, what kind of a legacy should we all want to live? Right? In our passage today, Jesus is coming to the end of his time here on earth. The beatings, the pain, the suffering, the death on the cross are just days off. But despite all of this, we're going to find today that despite all that was coming at him and towards him, he was able to recline at the house of a friend. And we find today Jesus reclining. Say that with me. Jesus reclining. The book of Mark, chapter 14. Now the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some sly way to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or the people may riot. And while Jesus, was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. This day was Tuesday. The Passover and Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples were only 2 days away. Judas' betrayal of Jesus was only 2 days away. Jesus' hate-filled trial before the Jewish religious leaders was only 2 days away. Peter's courtyard denial of Jesus was only 2 days away. And Jesus' hearings before the Roman leaders Pilate and then Herod and then back to Pilate were only 3 days away. And 3 days away, Jesus would be beaten and ravaged with a whip. In 3 days, a whole company of soldiers will gather around Jesus, and they will strip Jesus and put a scarlet robe on Jesus. And then they will twist together thorns to form a crown and stick it into the head of Jesus. And they will put a staff in Jesus' right hand, and they will now bow down before him and say, "Hail, the King of the Jews." And they will spit on him, and they will pommel him with their hands. And then they'll take that staff, and they'll strike Jesus on the head with it again and again. And after they finished mocking Jesus, they would take off the scarlet robe and put his clothes back on him. And then they will lead Jesus away to be crucified on a cross. And in 3 days, Jesus will be buried in a tomb. And even though Jesus knew that all these things would be happening in just 2 or 3 days, he was still able to recline at the home of a man known as Simon the leper. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wow, how is that even possible? If I know in 2 days that I'm going to be bloodied and beaten and whipped and ravaged and tormented, man, I'm doing everything I can to figure out a way to avoid the pain. Every second I'm thinking about how can I get out of this. I would use every breath I could breathe to find out how I can get away. And I would use every muscle I had to run and to find a place to hide. Not recline, not relax, unless I knew that what was coming was God's purpose for my life. Unless I knew this was the reason that I had been created. Unless I knew this was what God had in store for me, then I was made for just this moment. Then and only then, like Jesus, would I be able to recline at the home of some Simon the leper? So we find Jesus reclining. But then we'll find some people misunderstanding. Say that with me. People misunderstanding. And the passage continues. While he was in Bethany reclining at the table of a home known as Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on Jesus' head. And some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. Have you ever been misunderstood? Have your actions been misinterpreted? You were doing something that you thought was a good thing, was a kind thing, but those who were watching around you did not really understand what was taking place. So instead of building you up, they blew you up. Instead of lifting and thanking you for what you were doing, they ridiculed you. And you were misunderstood. And how did you feel? What was that like? They rebuked her harshly. I remember when we were living in the neighborhood, we came from Cherry Hills. One afternoon I was leisurely driving just through the back of our subdivision. Now, I am not known for leisurely driving, but today was an exception. It was a nice day. The sun was out. I'm driving along, enjoying the moment. As I'm driving through their neighborhood, there's a yard coming up on my right-hand side, and I noticed there are a lot of children playing out in the yard, young children, maybe 5 to 7 years old, having a great day. And as I get close to the house, and as I'm almost up to the house, there were two little girls. One little girl chasing the other little girl, and they were laughing, giggling, and the girl in front, maybe 6, 7 years old. But as I'm getting closer, she chases the girl in the back, chases the girl in the front towards the road, towards my car, coming towards the front of my car. And so, man, I put on the brakes hard. I had to stop quickly. And it sort of startled the girls, but they just giggled and they ran back to the house and kept on going. Well, I was concerned for their welfare. You know, I was concerned there were no parents out there. There was no adult supervision. And I was scared for them. So I stopped the car, got out, nothing, no big deal. And I went to the house, knocked on the door, and the mom came to the door. And I began to sort of describe to her what had happened, and I was just concerned for their safety when she cut me off. And she began to let me know that this was a family neighborhood, and that there were a lot of children in the neighborhood, and that I needed to drive more slowly, that I needed to be more cautious, that I needed to be watching out for the children, and that I needed to do this and this, and she just kept going on and on and on, and I'm listening, and it was almost like she thought it was my fault that her daughter was running to the road, and it was my fault that her daughter almost ran out into the road, and therefore, since it's my fault, I need to be more careful and more cautious. Needless to say, I didn't take that very well. And so I didn't say anything. I just walked away and got back in my car. I'm thinking the whole time, okay, lady, see if I ever try to help you again. And maybe in your life, you've been misunderstood. Your actions that were questioned. And what hurt the most is that they could not know the heart that you had, which led to your actions of love, of kindness. And this woman who was so thankful for Jesus, was so grateful for what Jesus had done for her. And out of her love for him, out of her desire to be a blessing to him, she took a jar of her expensive perfume, she broke it, and she poured it on his head to anoint him. And all these people, all they could think was, what a waste. What a waste. And they rebuked her harshly. Jesus reclining and people misunderstanding, all because this woman was simply doing. I say this with me, a woman doing. Leave her alone, said Jesus. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured the perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Now, did you catch the words there? She has done a beautiful thing for me, to me. She did what she could. She has done a beautiful thing to me, for me. She did what she could. The woman could not stop what would happen 2 days to Jesus. She could not put off what would happen in 3 days to Jesus, but she could help prepare Jesus for it. In the eyes of the people who are watching, they think, what a waste. What is going on here? But in the eyes of Jesus, as he's watching her, as he knows her heart and her intentions, she has done a beautiful thing to me. It may not have been world-shaking or news-making, but this woman did what she could, and as far as Jesus is concerned, it was the most beautiful thing that she could have done. And he says of her, I tell you the truth. Wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. What an amazing legacy for Jesus. She did what she could. But when you think about it, that's all any of us could really do for Jesus. She did what she could for Jesus. He did what he could for Jesus. I did what I could for Jesus. You did what you could for Jesus. We all did what we could for Jesus. And if we do this beautiful thing for Jesus, it will be good enough. And wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And it still is. She did what she could. What an amazing legacy. And might her legacy be our legacy too. We did what we could.